what makes someone, because Tyson, I used to love boxing as a kid, and I loved the old time boxers. I was a big fan of watching them, and their styles were so different. Muhammad Ali looked nothing like Mike Tyson in the ring, but was incredibly impressive in his own right. And of course, Tyson was a monster. What made Tyson so good? What made someone like Muhammad Ali so good? Because they're so different. Their styles look so different.
I think it was the belief in themselves, to be honest with you, because at the end of the day, everybody's going to have different styles that work towards their specific makeup and what they, honestly, it also has to do with, again, personality, right? Look at Tyson. He was a ferocious being. Like he was very dopamine driven.
Yeah, how many guys were beat before they even walked in the ring with that guy?
Yeah. So he had to have that style. Would you imagine him having a style like Muhammad Ali? Wouldn't make sense. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna eat your children.
And then float around you like a butterfly. So I think that is one thing. Also, it's more about like understanding their body and how they move in space, and that comes from training, but also the coach's eye, and having a coach that can look at someone and be like, all right, this is going to be good for him. And then their development through time and how they're working inside the gym increases their confidence. Yeah. So like if like Conor McGregor, the reason why he was talking that shit, because he had wars in the gym and he was beating people up and he put in the work. So now that switch has turned on to like, I'm ultra confident because I know I've done everything possible to put myself in this position. And so you can't knock him for being a little bit overconfident, because you're going to need that in a world of everybody's a killer. Yeah. So I have to be a king amongst kings.
Yeah. Now, what are some of the big misconceptions about what makes you a good hard puncher? I mean, is it, I'm strong in the gym, therefore I can punch hard? Is it, I swing? Like, what are some of the misconceptions where people are like, oh yeah, that guy should be able to punch pretty hard, but you're like, no.
I got that debate of like, everybody says, oh, you're born with punching power, you're born with knockout power. And don't get me wrong, like genetically, your genetic makeup and your limb length and your torque angles and how you put your punches together is going to give you a stronger, more powerful punch. And where you place it is definitely going to give you that. I think like a guy like powerful punchers. Name some powerful punchers that we had.
George Foreman was a hard hitter back then.
If you look at his limb length, like you look at how long his arms were and how he produced force and put it through his opponent, as opposed to just trying to put it and snap it back. Like he punched through his opponent. So it has something to do with that. Strength does play an underlining role, because force is obviously going to be one part of the equation when you're talking about power output. But when you're talking about like let's say for instance, and I go back to this because this is a guy I work with, is Dustin. He's not the strongest guy in the gym, but he can lay you out. Like he can crack. He can. His last 5 fights, I think he's got 5 knockouts. So he can crack. And obviously, Conor McGregor's not the most. He's not going to go in a strongman competition anytime soon. Right. But he can crack too. So I think at the end of the day, it's how you place your punches, how you create torque, and also how you understand where to place it from a precision standpoint.
Yeah. Now you've been in this game for a really long time, and you've seen the evolution of like science with sports performance and everything from PEDs to supplementation and diet. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen with all those things and then the evolution of the sport with MMA.
I think we're getting more educated on recovery methods with the PEDs. Obviously, you've seen people disintegrate in the sport based off of USADA. Right. USADA came in and a lot of guys went right back down.
Yeah, I remember the Pride guys came over to UFC and everybody lost 15 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's talk about this, because there is some arguments on this. Like, some people think that it's a massive advantage to have PEDs, but we talk about, what's more of an advantage? A guy that is naturally at 205 pounds and a badass fighter, or a guy that would normally be 175 juiced up to get to 205? We make the argument from just a fitness professional and understanding the body really well that I would think the natural guy at 205 is actually at an advantage.
For sure, yeah. And I get you on that, 100%. But the guys that don't understand that from a physiological level, right, from biochemistry level, they're like, oh, no, he's cheating. because he had to add something to himself. Right. Whereas that they could be taking creatine and BCAAs and all this other shit, but because it's androgynous and you put it in with a syringe, now it's bad.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the negative side effect.
I mean, where do you stand? I don't give a shit about everybody else. I have my opinion on what I just said.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, or do you disagree?
When it comes down to a sport that's one-on-one, I believe you should have an even playing field, right? So you should test both of them and see where their test levels lie.
Yeah.
If one is over the other, well then yes, you can do some TRT at that time to bring their levels the same.
Okay.
To maximize equal boundaries.
That's an interesting you think that we may see that in the future because there's so much of this? Maybe eventually we just say, listen, we're just, instead of trying to say he took all these PDs, this guy didn't, or this guy did a better job of hiding it, this guy didn't. Why don't we just straight up see where each guy's levels are and make sure they're equal going into a fight?
The problem is that takes too much time and energy. Right? Because it's hard to even match up guys now, and guys take fights on short notice. Yeah. So how are you going to get your blood work done? And then you got to,
good point.
You know what I mean?
There's also so many factors. Like you could have one person could have more androgen receptors, so his testosterone's lower, but his testosterone's more effective in his body, right? So that could also play a role. But yeah, when it comes to weight classes, I mean, okay, in the real world, you street fights, if you're bigger, there's an advantage there, but when you're all weighing the same, you're 175, you're 175. I would speculate, in my opinion, the PEDs like anabolic steroids really only make an advantage, give you an advantage with recovery, allowing you to not hurt yourself, because otherwise you're the same weight as the other guy. Yeah. And if you got to juice yourself up to that weight.
Well, not to mention, like, when you take anabolic steroids, it may help you build muscle, but you still have things like, tissue and ligaments and bones. And the natural guy has got the bone structure to support a 205 person. The guy who was 170 and juiced up to 205, his bones didn't grow to be a 205
Plus,
guy.
let's talk about this for a second, Phil. I'd love your opinion on this. You gain, if you're good at a skill at 175 pounds and you decide to gain 15 pounds, you've lost some timing and some skill because you're not really used to your body. You're now 185 or 190 pounds. You got to move different. I mean, is that an accurate statement? Yeah,
you lose your leverages. You have to learn how to move in space a little bit differently, especially if you don't have a long amount of time to get used to that weight. Because I went up, so I fought at 155, and I walked around at like 175, and then I went up to 170 and walked around at 205, and that training process at 205 was way different than 175. You know what I mean? So like
different size human.
And then on top of that, energy expenditure. So now it's like, okay, I need to learn how to move more efficiently with the body that I have now, because I'm putting out a large amount of energy here. So I think that plays a huge role in conditioning too as well. So if I'm going to go ahead and build a guy up to another weight class, I'm going to make sure that I give him the adequate amount of energy output so that when we train or when he goes into the fight, he has that training process down pat. And so that I can maximize my time there, but also equal out his efficiency of movement so that when he gets into the fight, he knows how to move in space.